afternoon, colleagues on the other side of the world. I am from South Africa. I am Dr. Marilies van Heerden, and I'm so thrilled to be here today. I hope this is bright enough for you. I have a colleague from Kali, very close to you, and she always tells me to dress bright and wear something bright. So, Maritza, I hope that this is bright enough for my Colombian colleagues. Right, so I thought let me just start by showing my face before I upload my PowerPoint so that you can at least see who's speaking. Today, I'd like to speak to you about how to create experiences of dignity for the other. And if I do have time, I'd like to share just a couple of examples of my own experiences from what we've learned in South Africa. Okay, so I'm very honored to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I am from Africa, bottom of Africa. I live there in that area over here. And my city's name is Gqeberha with a click, or Port Elizabeth or Nelson Mandela Bay. The latest name is Gqeberha, so that's the one that we're all practicing at the moment to say properly. It's a language that's extinct, so we all needed to practice it. My country has a lot of diverse people with diverse languages, cultures, religions, and so too, of course, is it the case in our classrooms at the university. But just to give you an idea, here's some faces to look at, some beautiful faces, and then also to see the different languages that is spoken in my country. I speak Afrikaans. So it forms 10% of the population speaks Afrikaans in South Africa. But just to give you an idea, there's now also a 12th official language, which is they've made sign language also an official language by us. So because of our apartheid past, there's been a lot of discrimination and inequality during that time. It's now 30 years later, and a lot has changed, but there's still a lot of issues in terms of diversity, and diversity is not a bad thing, but there's a lot of divisions still in society, right? So South African society and our university classrooms are divided and diverse in terms of race, culture, values and norms, meaning-making systems, and the way that we view and interpret the world, language, religion, our environments that we stay in, socioeconomic standing, class, history, but also all of the traumas that occurred in the past, political views, quality of prior education, because in the past the education was not equal, and then also privilege, which still very exists quite a lot still here. The issue of privilege and underprivilege, similar to, well, very similar to what's happening in Colombia as well. Maybe not similar, but I know that you can relate to that. So in 1994, the Bill of Rights came out, and which is a really good document. It promotes dignity for all, equality for all, non-discrimination, equal education. That's now important. That's different to what it was in the past. And then also the right to enjoy your culture, which I specifically like because we don't promote this idea of assimilation where everybody's supposed to be the same. You can be who you are. You can celebrate your culture, enjoy your culture, and that's okay, and that's good. So we say that we are united in our diversity. That's our constitution, by the way. So when we're speaking now about Congress of Human Development and Sustainability, this then has to do with cultural sustainability in the face of diversity, which is becoming a more pressing issue everywhere across the world at the moment. And this is really what I want to talk about today. So just to give you some context of the background from which I'm speaking, in 2016, our students protested. They called the big protest the Fees Must Fall protest. And during this time, they said the one big thing that they protested for was equal access to education, because at the time everyone was supposed to pay for education, for higher education. It wasn't free. And they protested for government-funded higher education, which there are now things in place that it is government funded. And then the other thing that they protested about, which didn't always make the news so much during that time, was that we needed to decolonize higher education. And the reasons for that were that we, at the university on the continent of Africa, working with Africans, whatever that is. That's also a big debate. Who is African, right? But but we were on the continent of Africa, and we were completely ignoring African philosophy, African ways of doing and being and living in the world, African knowledge, even scholarly knowledge generated by Africans, we kind of just ignored. And so the higher education system was focused on what was happening in Europe, basically. So Europe and the Americas, right? So what happened because of this neglect, there was hegemony in our curriculum. And the students were saying, but you are ignoring everything that we produce, which tells us that we don't count, we don't matter, what we produce isn't valid, it's not worthy of being mentioned in higher education. And this, of course, continues these power relations of who's worthy of what. Okay, so ultimately they said, look, our knowledge matters, our wisdom and our philosophies matter, and our language matter. And these are important to our existence, so we cannot just ignore them. So we need to include this in our curricula. So then our journey started. Well, my journey actually started way before then, but just to give you a context of where we are working in currently. So now questions to ponder throughout this talk today is this one, which is now my biggest passion project at the moment, is how do I, as educator or as a human being, create spaces for the other in my classroom, my workplace, or in my community in a manner that also creates experiences of dignity. Now, when I speak of experiences of dignity, I don't mean a fleeting moment of feeling good or a compliment. I mean of like a true, like, yo, I matter here. So how can you do that to make someone feel like that who might not be someone that's from the same cultural group as you? Okay, and then the second question is, what can I do to make minority or marginalized groups feel valued and worthy? And I made these two questions, although it can be the same question in certain circumstances, but I think both questions are important. In our country, it was the minority that ruled, not the majority. So that would be the flip. So it's not always about minority and majority, but sometimes it just has to do with who's being oppressed, who's being marginalized, and what can you do about it? Okay, so also you might wonder, who is my other? In this context, my other can be a whole bunch of different things. In this context, I'm speaking about different cultural groups. So different communities' way of upbringing. Culture in this context is a meaning-making system. So it's a way of viewing the world and interpreting the world. And in South Africa, we have many different cultural groups and many different ways of viewing and interpreting the world. Also, in my construction of who the other is, it's very important to note that I also view myself as an other. So I am your other because we don't share the same culture. So we are all an other to another at some point. And this is something that we need to remember also when we're in the classroom, but also when we are working with other people. Then when we start thinking about cultural sociology and so on, there's this idea that continuously automatically pops up, that culture is associated with the measurements of worth. So this culture is more important than that culture, or my culture is better than another culture, or my culture is not as whatever as another culture. So there's this idea of worth that's associated with cultural groups, where I feel that this has got to stop. We all have a tendency to do it, and this is a big problem. It's causing such problems in the world, and it's actually not a truth. The truth is, we as human beings are all have equal worth. We have equal worth to exist. So that is the bottom line, and I think that's really the passion, the crunch thing that I want to get out, is that this idea of always saying, yeah, but this cultural group and that cultural group, and somehow then measuring their worth, is a highly arrogant thing to do, and we need to stop. And how do we make that stop? How do we make this inequality way of viewing the world, how we make that stop, the cycle of inequality? The only way we can do it is through education. And this is where my passion comes in here. I'm just quickly going to mention, I started learning about new meaning-making systems in very strange ways. Though not strange ways, but my wake-up call, my first one when I had to reflect on this one time was when I learned an African song. My first African song that I learned in a different language. So I came from a classical music background and I was singing in the choir, and there came a lady and she came to teach us an African song. And she said, okay, we had to do it like this. And I kept on going, but where is the first beat? Because I was expecting a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And she kept on saying, no, it's not like that, it's like this. And for me to, at some point, I thought, no, but she's doing this wrong. She doesn't know what she's doing because she can't give us the first beat. She gets it wrong all the time. And I remember having these thoughts in my mind until later I realized, but this is an entire different way of making music, an entire different way of thinking and reasoning about music. The first beat is not important, and it's not where I would think it is, because it's a different way of thinking. So for me to start understanding a different meaning making system, I had to just go, okay, I cannot compare anymore to what I know. I need to just try and learn something new for what it is without comparing. And I'm not going to go into the rest of these stories because we are so short on time. You can ask me or you can read my article, but you're welcome to email me afterwards. So then, so in this context now of different meaning-making systems, and we're all staying together, and what is dignity then? This question, what is dignity in this context? Well, dignity, there's a concept of dignity, a part of dignity that's within the self, that's got to do with your self-worth. And then there's a part of dignity that is experienced through how other people are treating you. So this means that so we can actually impact the dignity of others, the experiences of dignity. So if you believe in the value of dignity, then you actually have something to do about it. You have a responsibility of treating somebody else with dignity. So this is a responsibility, but it's also a good thing, because that means that you have some kind of power to make somebody else feel dignified. So how can we do that? And the same goes for equality. If you believe in the value of equality, you have a way that you can make somebody else feel equal. So it's not just, I believe in equality, you must treat me as equal. No, but hang on. That also means that you have to do something. You also have to treat somebody else in a way so that they experience equality. And this idea of dignity is also tied to recognition of worth. And then if we think about recognition in the context of multicultural contexts, there is also this idea of recognition of sameness, where I am human and you are human, so we are the same. But some of the authors like Lash and Featherstone say to us, but it's not only about sameness. You also want to be unique. Yes, we are the same, but we are also unique because we have something valuable that we can contribute here that's different to what you have. So it's important to think about these two concepts of sameness and of difference when we're thinking of recognition. Okay, so then the question is, I'm just going to quickly run through these because we are running short on time, is then what can I do? How do we bring this all together? Someone asked me, so why are you so passionate about decolonizing education? What's the point? Why do you want to move backwards? Shouldn't you move forward in developing new knowledge? And I realized that this thought of decolonizing, going backwards, that wasn't the point at all. The point was, no, but it's not about that. It's about people want recognition of their worth. They matter. Well, that's why we are decolonizing, so that to show people, but you are worthy, you matter, you should be here, you are welcome, you belong in my space. So then the question is, what if we learned from decolonization that enables us to create experiences of dignity for the other? In the classroom, this is what I would suggest. Okay, so whose knowledge do we teach? Figure that out. If there is someone in your classroom that's not in your cultural group, are you teaching something of their knowledge to make them feel like they belong and that they matter, that their language matters? That because often what happens is, no, you mustn't come and speak your language over here. You need to speak my language. But by saying that, you say that that language doesn't matter, that cultural, the learner's family doesn't matter. Whatever the learner has learned somewhere else doesn't matter at all. It's not valid. It's not relevant. So you're actually belittling an entire cultural group by having that kind of attitude. So my question is, how can we teach in a way that we don't do that, that we think deeper, that we start including things to make sure that student or that learner will feel dignified, not only for the learner's sake, but for their cultural group, their family, what they've learned, their family values and all of that. How can you say, yes, that's good, and you belong and you are part of this space? And I think as teachers, we have a lot of power to do so. Now I see that we're almost finished with time. I hope that you are reading this slide and taking notes, because these are very important things that we've learned from the decolonization space of what we can do to help to start thinking differently about what we're teaching and really interrogate it, and how we can include material from that other culture, maybe a dance, maybe a song, maybe a composition, maybe a recipe, maybe a story. These things are important, but with their stories, with the history, not only as a little token. Okay, and then I know I'm running out of time, but I just quickly want to flip through these. The next things that I wanted to address was, but how do you become aware of this? How do you become aware of the dignity of others? What do you need to undergo, like a personal transformation of starting to view the world in this manner? And the first thing is to identify your own meaning-making system. So I'm going to flip through these in like 30 seconds. So identify your own meaning-making system. Write down the factors that influence your view of the world. And you can pause this at any time because it's a video. Okay, identify the different knowledge systems in your vicinity. So this is my meaning-making system. Who are the meaning-making systems in my vicinity? Okay, then start valuing difference. Do not be threatened by difference. Difference is good, it's interesting, be inquisitive about it. Okay, it's not really helpful to say that I do not see difference. I think that's quite patronizing, because people who experience being discriminated against experiences it all the time. So if someone comes and says, yeah, but I don't see the difference, you're actually patronizing them, because you're saying that there's not a problem, or they so if you're coming from a place of from privilege, you can say that I don't see difference. But if you're coming from a place of underprivilege, you can really not say it, because you experience it every day. And I think that's important to also recognize when we think about this. So how do we see difference, value difference, be inquisitive about it, don't be threatened by it. Interact with the other. I think that's the most important thing. Once you've managed to identify these different meaning-making systems, interact, make friends, start conversations in a humble way. You are not all-knowing, and you don't know everything, and you are not better. You are just different. So start asking questions in a very humble way and say, I'm still learning, and maintain that I'm still learning stance. Okay. As you interact, seek multiple meanings of concepts. Remember, your concepts of what you understand on certain words is not going to be the same as what other people understand. And I'm quickly aware of time, so I'm going to go through. Identify potential spaces of indoctrination from your own upbringing. So this measurements of worth idea, try and identify where are those things and how can you break away from that. Ask the other to keep you accountable in your classroom if you are brave enough to do that. I have done that, and it's been such a learning curve, so it's been wonderful. And recognize the process of unlearning and learning from your mistakes. All right, so I think that's the end of my PowerPoints, and I just want to end with this quote saying, for to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. That's Nelson Mandela. There we go, and there's my publication. You can read it. It was published at the end of last year. And then just to say, apologies for all the is and the ish spelling mistakes. They weren't actually spelling mistakes. The system actually changed it somehow, recognized the language thing, because they recognized that I'm working on a Spanish platform, and I'm so sorry about that. Okay, so that's all it is. Please contact me if you want to know more. It was lovely being here. I'm looking forward to the questions and answers time. Bye.